Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here with the World Class Championship Wrestling Review Series. We are entering February of 1987, and wow, by the end of this month, really, in all honesty, we get to a place where there's very little else going on in terms of main event talent. It's very, I won't necessarily say disheartening, but it's tough. We open with Master G and Matt Bourne versus Roberto Soto and Scott Casey. Interesting team, although not quite sure where it necessarily comes from. Soto and G square off early and for the most part tag off to Scott Casey. Arm drags early and a big back body drop by Soto. Amazingly, I'm about 1 month ahead of what I'm recording right now, and there is a Warrior Master G match, which is just abysmally bad, coming up in March. So anyway, Casey is now in there with Matt Bourne and you know, I mean, Soto and Casey kind of work well together, I guess. Although Matt Bourne struggling in an opening match on TV like this, or at least not being in a more main event scenario, when you have a weakened roster with Kerry being out, Mike Von Erich having his issues, Lance hasn't been seen in a couple of weeks, so maybe there's an injury there or he's moved on or something. But it's interesting to me that you wouldn't put Matt Bourne in that main event slot. Percy Pringle on the outside, of course, with Bourne and G. Cut off the ring. G continues to go at Scott Casey pretty aggressively with strikes. And shoulder tackle. G with an athletic maneuver up and over on the shoulder tackle. I will say his athleticism is getting a little better. Soto with an amazing drop kick and a big body slam. It's not a bad, if you just take it as a standalone match, it's not bad at all. But at the same time, there is a lot of, and there's a stun gun by G. There's a lot of feelings where you're just like, wow, how far they've fallen. The bombs away from the top rope by Matt Bourne is what gained the victory. The grappler faces Red River Jack. Of course, Red River Jack is Bruiser Brody in a trench coat, white hat, and white mask. People are aware of this. But anyhow, you know, and they do the mask gimmick just because. So it's very rare, but two masked guys. We haven't seen that since the first few years of World Class here in the review series, which we are upwards of 250 full episode reviews, probably be upwards of about 320, 330 by the time we finish what's available on the network, and hope you're enjoying all that. Hope you're enjoying the channel in general. And shoulder tackles by Brody early, big boot by Brody, and that's kind of the dead giveaway that Gary Hart talks about. Brody goes to the outside with or I guess I should call him Red River Jack goes to the outside. Jack with power moves notwithstanding, and they kind of go. Grappler tries to hit a few shots, doesn't get all he wants on the shots that he hits, and we see a middle rope forward dive knee drop by Red River Jack for the victory. Then we go to Gary Hart talking about the identity of Red River Jack. Obviously, he's unhappy with the continuation of the purportance that it's Bruiser Brody, and since Brody was run out of town by Abdullah the Butcher a few months back, then he's frustrated by that. Killer Brooks and Tony Atlas up next. They edit with the guys already in the ring. Atlas brawls his way around, uses power, and Brooks doing a lot of backing off, actually. Surprising that Killer Brooks spends the first few minutes of the match backing off from Tony Atlas, Atlas is a guy that you would think would be a little higher on the card with the roster they have, especially by the end of this month, and some returning talent that tells me they were struggling. A couple angles tell me they're struggling too. But anyway, Brooks is tied up in the ropes and gets out of that barely and manages to hit some basic punches and kicks on Tony Atlas. Atlas, of course, involved in the cage affair with Abdullah the Butcher and Bruiser Brody. Brody, of course, a real life friend of his, and we do see Tony Atlas get the victory here. We move on to Abdullah the Butcher in I believe, semi-main event position. Abdullah the Butcher against Steve Simpson, and this is about what you'd expect. Butcher brawling with Simpson on the floor. Simpson doesn't even, I don't think, get in the ring before the brawl continues here. And obviously what you're seeing is more chaos from Abdullah the Butcher. Jumps him from behind with the chair, goes right at the guy, and gets busted wide open. Gary Hart gets involved in causing more chaos. Simpson does get finally in the ring and gets choked and beaten pretty harshly by Abdullah, and obviously that's not the plan that he wants to have, so certainly he goes right after trying to get to his feet, but Abdullah literally claws and clutches at him. Simpson's busted wide open. Amazing to me that these shows don't get blood warnings, so maybe whoever edited these weren't taking them as seriously. Abdullah using the fork among other brawling-related tactics, and Abdullah is a guy that he's an acquired taste, to say the very least. You either like him in the style he brings or you don't. I fall in the don't category because blood for the sake of blood never did anything for me, and that's kind of what I see him as. But anyway, we move through. Abdullah does manage to continue the brawl. Simpson does get a kick, and actually a couple of them. And finally, the referee puts a stop to things. Simpson manages to get away from Abdullah. There's a disqualification there, and kind of, ultimately Simpson wins, but that sets up the Gary Hart and David Manning match that is upcoming, is set up partially by this. The Von Erichs and the Dingo Warrior versus Adias Madril and not Steve Bradley, friend of mine, Bob Bradley. Anyway, attempted backdrop by Von Erich. In this case, Kevin hits Mike hits quite a few drop kicks in a row before going to go to battle with Al Madril. Big body slam into a power slam by Lance Von Erich, who I mentioned hadn't been around in a while, so maybe it's just that he'd been missing on a couple of episodes I've seen since. Double cross body takes out Adias and Madril. Big back body drop and a drop kick by Lance Von Erich. At this point, I would say Lance is the most over of the Von Erichs, which is weird considering he's kind of an implant, a retread kind of thing. Bob Bradley and the Warrior in there. Odd that I believe Warrior in a couple of years on Wrestling Challenge defeats Bradley in a enhancement talent match that I remember pretty well. Warrior sends both Adias and Bradley head-to-head together. Warrior does get 2-on-1 for a minute, and eventually Lance Von Erich goes for the pinfall. Bradley is in the rope area, and that doesn't go very well. Adias and Lance Von Erich go at it for the next few minutes. Adias getting the better part of that. Obviously, the entire crowd behind the Von Erichs and the Warrior. Tag back to Mike Von Erich. Big snap suplex by Brian Adias. And Von Erich comes out the back door. Sooner or later, the Warrior does come back in, and he obviously is used as the powerhouse cleaner, for lack of a better term. But lots of punishment put on Von Erich, specifically Mike, during the mid part of the match here, who really does struggle to be a guy who is ever the same after his injury and such. And it's tough. And for some reason, I have been calling him Mike the whole time when it's actually Kevin. And I own my mistake. For some reason, I was looking at another bit of notes. Anyway, Kevin's the one taking the punishment, and he gets beat down for several minutes here. And there is, he manages to roll through, tag off to the Warrior. Warrior's the guy they're really trying to get over in this era, and he comes in, hits a whole bunch of shots. Some of those punches don't look very, very comforting, to say the very least. But we kind of go with it, and Warrior is back up, makes a tag to Lance Von Erich, and it is the baby faces that get the victory here, and that's all that really counts. Then we go to Kevin Von Erich promo. He's talking about wanting Al Madril and Brian Adias in the ring. Obviously, as the WCWA champion, he wants to face whomever he can, but that'll close us for the first week in February here in World Class. Till next time, keep your feet on the ground, your mind in the moment.